They may be few in number, less than 1% of Brazil's population. Some live deep in the jungle, isolated from the modern world. But lately, Brazil's 1 million indigenous people have been making their voices heard in the centers of political power.
We had to unite indigenous people from all over the country and make strategic alliances in Brazil and abroad to fight our common enemy, President Jair Bolsonaro. His government has been pushing for legislation opening our lands to commercial mining and farming and turning a blind eye to the destruction of the Amazon.
The goal is to fight back by electing their own lawmakers, and they have significant support. An organization called the Articulation of Brazil's Indigenous People is backing 30 candidates, like Sônia Guajajara, recently described by Time magazine as one of the 100 most influential people in the world.
We have never suffered so much violence in indigenous territories like now, with attacks and assassinations.
The independently run Indigenous Missionary Council registered 305 cases of attacks in 226 indigenous territories in 2021. That's 3 times more than in 2018. Earlier this year, indigenous expert Bruno Pereira and British journalist Dom Phillips were shot dead by a local fisherman in a remote area of the Amazon. The killings attracted global attention. Pereira had been helping indigenous patrols investigate illegal fishing and poaching in the Javari Valley. The territory is home to the world's largest number of isolated tribes, and the invaders were allegedly working for drug cartels. World-renowned photographer Sebastião Salgado, like many others, points the finger at Bolsonaro.
I blame the government for the deaths of Bruno Pereira and Dom Phillips because the president left the Amazon unprotected, permitting criminal gangs to take over. Violence in the Amazon has increased tremendously.
Long before the presidential election campaign started, hundreds of indigenous tribes gathered in Brasilia to put their demands in writing. Sônia Guajajara presented the document to leftist candidate Luiz Inacio Lula da Silva, who's leading in the polls against current President Bolsonaro. He signed it and promised to create a ministry for the indigenous. For Brazil's indigenous people, what's at stake in these elections is their constitutional rights, and by extension, their very survival. Hundreds of claims for indigenous ancestral lands have been put on hold during Bolsonaro's term as president. This has created an environment of uncertainty that critics say pro-development groups are exploiting through increased land invasions and violence. Monica Yanakiev, Al Jazeera, Rio de Janeiro.